All right.
Ooh.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Why can't I say it for once?
Blast off. Go ahead. Say it.
No, I don't want to anymore.
Huh? Go ahead.
I don't want to anymore.
Count from 500 all the way down.
I don't want to.
Why?
Because.
What's that song? That song?
Which one?
Mr.
Major Tom.
Yeah.
Major Tom.
Yeah, but how's this?
Something.
Ground control.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Yeah. Okay.
Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool song.
Alrighty.
Good morning, everybody.
They're great.
I'm on.
Tony the Tiger.
I know. I'm on how many hours of sleep right now?
Man, I haven't had Frosted Flakes in a long time.
I just asked you a question.
What'd you ask me?
I'm on how many hours of sleep?
I don't know. I didn't count your hours.
I'm on 3 hours of
I know
sleep.
you're a little less than me.
You got a lot more than me.
A lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got like 4 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay.
5 hours. You guys.
Hydrate.
We had a major scare yesterday. And, you know, we got to get with this whole lockdown and all of that. You know, I was telling our church family and our church group that we really got to get our teenagers and our youth and our young adults, you know, because a lot of the times we think like because they're being locked in and everything that they're having time off from school, it's a pretty cool thing, and because they're off and all of that it may be good for them. But see, we don't stop and realize that all of this can sometimes be a scary situation for them, even though they don't show it or we don't really see it as much. Why? Because they isolate themselves in their room and we think that they're on their games or they're doing their homework or they're doing things or they're on their computer or whatever we think that they're doing. But, you know, there may be moments that they're probably feeling a little isolated and they're feeling a lot of that. And that comes along with depression and that comes along with stress and it comes along with a lot of that. You know, last night, I'm going to say around midnight. It was around midnight, right? It was close to midnight.
Past that.
Yeah, a little bit past midnight. David and I were sitting here in the living room and we heard my 22-year-old in the kitchen and he was coming down to get some water from my other son. And I hear the water fall. And so I get up and, you know, I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, oh, I dropped the water. And I said, okay, we'll just pick it up, mijo, you know. And next thing you know, I come back, I sit down, and we hear a huge, huge thump. And I yell out for him, and I don't hear anything. And I yell out again, and I don't hear anything. And so I got up and I ran to the kitchen, and, you know, my son was seizing. He was having a really bad seizure.
And he doesn't get seizures.
No, he doesn't get seizures. He was having a really bad seizure. And of course, as a mom, you know, I don't see my son breathing. I don't see him, you know, responding. And I'm yelling out for David. And, you know, David's calling 911. And it's a scary, it's very scary, you know, because, you know, at that moment when things happen so quickly, you know, you don't know. It's easier for me as a mother to react when it's someone else, you know, like I can react when it's a stranger, or I can react when it's somebody else's kid very quickly. And I know how to react. I know what to do. But when it comes to one of my own children, I don't know how to react because it just becomes so terrifying because it happens so quickly that I didn't know what to do. And of course, the ambulance comes and, you know, and he came back after a certain amount of seconds. He started finally catching his breath. And,
And they show up dressed like that movie Outbreak.
yeah, they show up all dressed up, all
Full COVID gear.
Full COVID gear. And the first thing in my thought is like, I don't want my son to go, and at that point I'm regretting the fact of calling 911 because I'm like, I don't want him to have to go now because I want to go with him to the hospital. And now they're telling me, you can't go. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't go? I want to go with my son, and I'm broken. I'm crying because I want to go with my son. I want to be with him. I need to know what's wrong with him. And I'm being told that I can't go. And it was hard for me, so, when you get hit at that moment, it's like reality just sinks in. Everything just really sinks in at that moment. And, and I had to let my son go. And I came in here and I paced and paced and paced and had to, called my family and I just sat in this living room and I had to recollect myself and just pray and just talk to God and just seek God and ask God to give me the strength and that peace in my heart, and I was talking to David and I said, he's coming back home, he's coming home. They're just going to check him out and he's going to come home. He's going to be fine. He's going to come home. And they did. They checked him out. They could not figure out what was going on. And they sent him back home. So, I went to go get my son after several hours and stuff. And there's just a lot of stress. There's a lot of things that led up to that, led up to stress.
I fell asleep like 3:30, 4 in the morning.
And I fell asleep after that still. Mm-hmm. So it was like 4 o'clock and I had to get up early to go to work. But this is, I'm realizing now the stress that it's causing, that even our young people, and what it can do to them. So I was telling our church family today, make sure that what your young people are doing. Make sure that you're just communicating and that you're being a part of their day and that you're constantly calling them down or talking to them. What are you doing? Let's play some cards. Let's do something, interaction. There has to be a lot of that going on, especially right now. Make dinner, sit them down with you. Don't make dinner and let them go upstairs or let them take it into their room. Sit down at the table with them, spend that time with them, because this is the time where you need to be with your family and you need to be with your children. There has to be interaction. Do not let anybody within your family isolate during these times. There's too much time to think and too much time for the enemy to come in and mess with your mind, too much time.
My thoughts were way different. I mean, a mother's always going to think different. But it made me think some other thoughts that I just wanted to share today. I'm going to talk about 2 points, so don't throw me off because I'll forget. Okay, one is it made me think of the many families that the ambulance picked them up because they are COVID. They take them to the hospital, and that's the last you ever see them. Like you see them on a gurney being put in an ambulance and you never see them again until so there's a lot of people. So it made me think of that, even though he wasn't going for that reason. But that thought went in my mind as they're carrying him away. I'm like, oh my God, people going through this because the person can't breathe or whatever. And that's the last they ever see them alive. So that thought came in my mind, not so much for Matthew, but other people that it gave us a glimpse of that experience.
That thought came into my mind too.
The second point is it's very hurtful when I go on social media and I see Christians, my fellow brothers and sisters, that maybe they live in a state where it's not New York or it's not California where it's a hot spot, and they're actually denying that this is even real. And that is so hurtful. Do you realize that you have brothers and sisters in hotspot states that are dying? You have brothers and sisters that their families are forever changed, forever shattered. And to go on Facebook and see people say, oh man, it's just the government. Oh, this is fake. There ain't no such thing as a virus. I just want to let you guys know that is very hurtful to people. You have no idea who's on your timeline. And there's people that are shattered, families that are broken. Please. That gave me a glimpse of how it must feel when third world countries, and like my mind went all over the place. How many times has Pastor Thomas or them talked about Christians that are being killed and mutilated and this and that? And we're sitting here like, oh yeah, whenever persecution comes, I think, I didn't realize how that's a low blow to fellow believers on the other side of the globe. So please, all I'm saying is this: be mindful. Just because you live in a state, instead of saying it ain't real, thank God that you don't live in a hot spot.
And just pray for your fellow brothers and sisters, because David is right. I didn't want to say that, but yesterday, that feeling as a mother where I'm seeing my son profusely sweat, he's so hot, and I'm sitting there thinking, they're going to test him. They're going to, because he's sweating. He looks like he has a fever. And,
his skin was all white.
His skin was all white. And he's like, I felt feverish, Mom, earlier, and all of that. And I'm like, please don't say that to them. I'm like, I'm just like, so much was going through my mind. And then on top of that, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm over there at the hospital and I'm literally trying to get in and they're turning me down at the door. And all I want to know is how my son's doing, and they can't even tell me anything. They can't even tell me if my son's breathing or if he's anything. They can't tell me anything. And all they did was sit there and give me a piece of paper and say, here's a phone number. Call this number. So it is not fun, you guys. It is not a fun thing to even just go through that. I can't even imagine when they pull somebody that you love away with the symptoms of COVID.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I'll see some people post, and I know they're mocking, because they'll be like, does anybody even know anybody that has this? And I'm like, yeah, actually, yeah. But
I saw somebody that posted that, and I said, actually, yeah, my daughter's grandfather passed away, on Sunday. He passed away on Sunday, and her grandmother is hanging on to life now on a respirator. I did tell somebody, there's so many people that are asking questions like that, but, I guess sometimes reality has to hit sometimes, because there was at one point where I was, I never asked that, but I was kind of like, oh, it's happening in New York. It's happening somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But see, we don't realize it until it gets closer and it hits closer to home. And then the moment when it does hit close to home is where you feel the impact, Yeah. So we just gotta, sometimes it's better just to stay quiet and just to stand in the gap and be in the presence of the Lord for those that we love and really stand in the gap for them.
It's weird because I remember reading a Bible verse, and it's not the verse I'm going to read today, but I don't even know where it's at right now, top of my head. But actually, I'll write it on the screen after when I'm editing. But it basically says that in the last days, the hearts of many will grow cold. And
That's what it feels
I
like.
always thought that would be the non-believers. But I see so many I have a lot of Christians. I have 5,000 Facebook friends, probably 90% Christians, and they're the coldest people. And I never thought that verse ever made sense until the last 10 years or so, that the hearts of many will wax cold. So, I wanted to talk about something real quick that kind of, I guess, goes into that. Is I never do this. We never do this. We never really confront questions on a comment, especially by non-believer, because I don't want to be led by non-believers. But it was an important question that I think a lot of people ask, whether they ask themselves. And I wanted to give you some insight about something, because usually when people say this, it's from a perception that I don't think they've really thought through. And the question was this, and this goes for many things, but the question was basically, if there's even a God, then, because this person didn't believe there's a God, then why would he allow this virus? That is a old question. If there's a God, why do people die of AIDS? If there's a God, why do people die of cancer? If there's a God,
why did he take my mom? Why did he take
why do
my
children
child?
starve to death? Yeah. Why do people die in war?
We always question why God does what he does if he was such a God.
And so I want to tackle this question, guys, because maybe as a believer, you've gotten hit with that question, or maybe you yourself. And I need you to change something in the way you see things. Okay. I once had somebody in one of my brother's wives. She was a new believer coming into the family and whatnot. And she goes, I don't understand. If there's a God, why do people starve in the world? Why is there hungry people everywhere I go, the homeless in other countries and this and that? And I said this to her. I said, there's a such thing as a Lord's Prayer. That where he says, the Lord's Prayer, right? The one everybody repeats that I always forget every time I do these.
No, you do it every single time.
I do it every time. Lord, give us this day our daily bread. That one. Do you know when you're praying that? Millions of people pray that all the time. What you're saying is, Lord, provide food for us, please. So, do you know that God answers that prayer every day? So you're like, then why are people starving? I'm going to give you that question. You need to see this and realize this. Did you know that this earth produces enough grain to feed the whole world? This world produces enough corn to feed the whole world. Tomatoes, vegetables, you name it. Matter of fact,
crop, enough everything.
If you would gather all of the food in this world, everybody would have 3 meals a day. So God does his part. He allows the rain to come. He allows the sun to come. He creates the fertile soil. So the food is produced. So why is there hungry people? Because of corporations? Mm-hmm. Because of greed?
Because of greed.
How do I know this? My dad was a farmer. Do you know that when they have enough tomatoes, that when there's abundance of tomatoes, they will destroy an entire field, because if not, it'll bring down the price of tomatoes. Not my dad, it's my dad's boss. This comes from the state. The state regulates and says, you know what? There's too many tomatoes this year. It'll drop the price, destroy that field. They do this, guys, with animals, vegetables, fruits.
With all crops.
Everything. So, is that God's fault that they could, how many people could have...
Man has put so much regulations in
How many people would have been fed with those tomatoes, with that corn, with those watermelons?
That's a lot of tomato soup.
Yes, exactly. So it's the same way, like, it goes on and on and on, right? So let's go into the retail. There are places that will have an abundance of food, but because of regulations, they can't give it out to the hungry. They will destroy that food. Restaurants, supermarkets,
bakeries, everything.
Man, I remember, what was it? Was it you or my mom? Somebody bought grapes, and there was a couple bad ones. And I don't remember if it was you or my mom said, hey, something, they complained about it, if they could get another bag. And they basically threw all of them away, like the whole bag of 2 pounds.
Probably your mom, not me.
Because there was a couple grapes. It was when I was living in the RV.
Okay, probably your mom.
Yeah, and it was like, my mom was like, you're going to throw those? It was at probably Winco. She's like, they're going to throw them away? And the guy was like, yeah, ma'am, that's kind of, I forgot what it was exactly. But my point is this, is that he said tons of food gets thrown away at the grocery stores.
Yeah, we went to a bakery and it was literally...
Oh, yeah.
They closed at 10 o'clock at night. It was like 9:56. The last people there, and they had so much, and we're all like, what are you guys going to do with all that stuff?
You're going to sell it tomorrow?
Are you going to resell it? And they're all like, no, we just throw it away. I'm like, well, we have a church. Can you donate that, or something like that? They said, no, we're not allowed to. We have to throw it away. And I was in shock because this is gourmet baked goods that they had just baked fresh that day. And they had to throw it away.
Well, destroy it.
They had to destroy it. Not just throw it away, but they have to destroy it. They put it through this thing and they destroy it and it has to be gone. And to me, it's just like, it made me feel like all the hard work that was put into this, it was a beautiful bakery and just everything that had to be destroyed when it could have been given to the homeless and this happens a lot everywhere. Trust me.
So that's God's fault that people are hungry? You got to change your perception. Okay, let's go on to other things, right? So somebody... the food industry, the stuff they do to the animals, the stuff they put in the animals and in the meat, the steroids that they put, that they give it to us and we eat it and we get cancer. And now it's God's fault because of what man is doing to the animals and the meat. The stuff they put in the water, that's God's fault. And it's like, I use this example of having a child and you tell them, don't run out in the street. Don't run out in the street. Please don't run in the street. You're going to get hurt. I love you. Don't ever run in the street. There's cars that go by. Don't run in the street. You tell them all your life. Finally, the kid goes, gets hit. And then people say, man, God, where was God? That's God's fault. It's like people are so quick to blame God for the things that man does. You know how many people in prison, okay, forget other people, me at first. I'm like, God, why'd you put me in prison? Why'd you put me here? Why'd you take me away from my kids? Why'd you take me away, from my mom and my dad? Why'd you take it? And it's like, God's like, oh, I told you to sell drugs? I told you to break the law? Okay. So it's like everything that we blame, like, where is God? Why is that? This thing, let's say there's two theories right now. One is that it started in a market. Another one is that it got leaked from a laboratory.
And then other ones are crazy towers.
Yeah. So let's say it was the animals. Let's say it did come from that meat market, those markets, those wet markets, whatnot. God told us to do that? Like, matter of fact, if you read the book in the Bible, in the first books, he's very strict in what to eat and how to cook it and how to prepare it. Why? Maybe because he knows that people get sick from it. Mm-hmm. But now it's God's fault that there's a virus? Or let's say the other way, there's a scientist that wants to go and play God and play with viruses and this and that, and then that virus gets leaked. Oh, that's God's fault? So you can't come and say, if there's a God, Why did this happen? Why did that happen? You can't take yourself out of the equation. You can't take humanity out of the equation. Now, somebody might say, well, then God can still show up, right? Well, you got to make up your mind then. Do we want free will or not? Because that's what it comes down to. Do we want to be like, hey, let us, God, we're gonna smoke all we want, but you're gonna come and heal our lungs. We're gonna eat whatever we want, and you're gonna come clear out our arteries. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. You gotta make up our minds. Do we want free will or do we not? Free will is that he loves us enough that he is going to allow us to go out and do what it is, live the life that we choose. So, and hopefully we choose the right things. But we don't have that right if we have free will to then blame God and say, where you at?
And you know what the most awesome thing is that when we put greed aside and when we put all that stuff aside and we take what God has given us, it multiplies. There's a multiplication. Because he supplies exactly what it is that we need. Don't forget then when the manna was given from heaven, he says, take what we need and just what we need. When there was when they took more than what they needed, it turned into maggots. It turned into, because it was more than what they needed. There was the gluttony. There was a lot of that, So it's so important that we realize. And I know this because I remember when we would go feed the homeless, and it could have been easy for me to go and make trays of unhealthy stuff. But, God provided and he sustained and he allowed us to make something healthy for them. Yeah. And it was crazy because he took the things of the earth, the things that were cheap, the things that were inexpensive, that came from the earth, the organic vegetables, the organic stuff. And I was able to provide them with $75, $80, $100 to make a huge, huge pot of the most healthiest, nutritious soup for them and feed 350 people.
Yeah.
And even though there was other stuff that you have to buy, like the bowls and the spoons and all that other stuff, but the soup itself, it was so nutritious. And there was so many vitamins and nutrients in it that sustained them. But it was all provided from the earth. It was all provided from God's nature. And that's the thing, that he will provide. He gives us exactly what we need when we put all that stuff aside.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that it's a very elementary question, honestly.
Yeah.
When somebody says that, I'm sorry, it doesn't come off as intellectual. It comes off as not well thought out when somebody really says, well, if this happens, then how can there be a God? That would be like me being in prison and me telling people that I had really great parents, because I do. And somebody saying, I don't believe you. I don't think you have parents. Because you wouldn't be here if that were true. Is that my parents' fault? No. It was my choices. It was my choices.
Well, it's almost like blaming the child for being abused.
Yeah, that too.
It's almost like saying, I was abused by my own father, sexually abused. And it's almost like saying, oh, then it must have been your fault then.
Yeah.
You can't blame the child because the child didn't ask for it. If something happens, it happened. So you can't blame the child for it. You overcome that. We overcome that. We live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
We live in a fallen world. And see, I know that. I know that now. I grew up to have to learn that and know that we live in a fallen world. And I grew up to learn to forgive my father. See, but I had to love myself enough to be able to know what forgiveness was so that I can forgive my father. And I did. So we have to know that, you know, and we can't go around blaming a child for something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. See, there's things God instituted in the beginning where he says to tell your children about him.
Yeah.
Teach them. He says, teach your children in the morning and in the night. That way they always have the word of God in them. There's always that guidance. There's always that word of the Lord. So let's say a generation doesn't tell their children. So now those children grow up godless.
Yeah.
And that creates a slippery slope. And the reason many of us were in the places that we were in our lives is because generations past, our families forgot about God. And eventually it creates what happens. You know, it's like you can't take God out of schools. You can't take this and then expect things to be okay. And then wonder why the world is the way it is a few generations later.
Now, here's another thing. I can understand if somebody questions that after going through something so hard that they question it.
Yeah.
I will say this to you, that if you have lost somebody and you blame God, or you're upset at God, or you're hurtful towards God, God is so big and he loves you so much that he can take it.
Yeah.
That he's not going to go anywhere. He's not going to turn his back on you. He'll be like, it's okay if you're hurt and if you're angry because I'm here for you. And I'm going to be here for you until you get over this, because I'm going to embrace you regardless. I'm going to love you regardless, because I know that right now you're hurting and I know what you're going through. And I know right now you're not thinking right because I have you. It's okay, because you're not understanding why. And that's okay. And see, I've gone through that. I've had family who's gone through that. They're like, why? Why did they take them from me? Why did God do this? Why? Why, God? Why? And they're angry with God. And that moment comes where they're just crying out to God, but God has never gone anywhere. God has always been there. Jesus is like, let me hold you, daughter. Let me embrace you. Let me love you. I'm still here. I never went anywhere. I've always been here. Even when you were at your maddest with me. Even when you were telling me to go, I've been here.
Yeah.
You know?
I couldn't have said that any better. You know, it's true. God is big. He can handle your yelling. Matter of fact, he would rather you yell at him than to hold it. Because when you hold it, it kills you and it destroys you.
Yeah.
Why do you think, you know, when he says, come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. You know what he's saying? He says, you got something to say? Don't hold it. Say it to me. Yeah. You want to yell? Don't hold it. Yell at me. You want to rage? You want to vent? You want to unleash? Then come. Lay it on me. Because he can handle the weight.
Yeah.
Because that weight will kill us.
Yeah.
That weight will destroy us. But he can handle it.
Yeah, because it turns to bitterness, resentment. It turns to all of that. See, it's better to have that impact than to allow something to become so callous. Have you ever had when you go on the monkey bars and you start to grow that really hard, thick skin, and it becomes so callous? That's what that's how our heart becomes. Your heart becomes so callous. It's so hard, and over time, And you don't want that. You don't want your heart to become that, you know? So do what you got to do, you know, because he's not going to go anywhere. He's not going to go anywhere.
Well, guys, that's what we wanted to share today. And I pray that it helped you see this thing in a different way, and it opened it up.
Amen.
You know, because that's what this is about. This is about growth. This is about making things relevant and growing from it and allowing you to expand your way of life to see things in the bigger picture. Amen. That's all we're trying to do. We don't want anybody living in a bubble. God doesn't want us to live in a bubble. You know, he wants us to see things as they are.
Amen.
So, all right, guys, good morning. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Spend some time with the kids today. Bring them down. Have a game night with them. It's Friday. Have game night. Bring out the dominoes. Bring out the cards. Bring out the Monopoly. Bring out Uno. Anything.
A puzzle.
Yes. I challenge you to bring out the games tonight and have game night with your youth, your young adults, with the other adults in the house. Bring out the games, and I want you guys to post pictures of your game night. Like, seriously, I want to see.
If they have social media.
If you have social media, post pictures. And if not, on your comments, tell me what you guys are going to be playing. I want to know. I want to hear what you guys are going to be doing. Let's make Friday night game night with the family. And let's do this, you know, because, man, you know, seeing my son on that floor yesterday, it just made me realize that they should not be in solitude. They should not be isolated. And we need to be the ones to encourage them to come out of that, because sometimes they don't know how to come out of that themselves. We need to bring them out of that. We need to encourage them. That's what we're there for. So let's be the ones to help them come out of that isolation, help them come out of their rooms, encourage them, make it fun for them. So bring out those games, guys, and let's do it together, okay?
And if you have little ones, this is what I used to do, and I know this is effective because my daughter to this day, how old is Leanna? Is she 30 already?
She's going to be 30. She's right before my son. My son's going to be 30.
Yeah.
We're the same age.
To this day, she remembers me coloring with her. Mm-hmm. You know, so if you have little ones,
crafts.
Bring out their crayons, bring out their pens, and you have no idea what you are doing when you do that with them. They will carry that forever.
Absolutely. Bring out some macaroni. I used to get string and macaroni and have them color the macaroni and make macaroni necklaces for the girls, you know? Get some glue, make macaroni artwork, you know? There's so many things that you can do at home with your kids. Have them make their own little face mask nowadays, you know? Have them get some cloth and some little glue and have them do their own stuff. Be creative. Just make it a Friday family night. That's a good Friday family night. All right. We love you guys.
All right.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.